So welcome to our webinar tonight. It's called Heal with me, Michael Dalton. And we got an exciting talk tonight. So our webinar on Heal, but also we're in the Lionsgate portal. And that's a significant energy portal where the energy opens up. And it's where Sirius aligns with the Sun and Leo. And so it's a lot of energy starts coming in, a lot of energy to move through our bodies, to up level our consciousness, to upgrade us. And that started July 28 and goes on to August 12th. And tomorrow would be the high point, the 8 of the 8 of the 8. And so usually we get it on the 8th of August every year, but this year it'll also be the 8 of the 8 of 2024 when added together is also an 8. So it's a very special energy. And so my talk tonight, I wanted to kind of tap into manifestation and intention. Does that sound good? Awesome. Well, the portal of 888, like the number 8 often represents like abundance, luck, opportunities, finances in a very positive way. And then this being an 888, we've got that, triple. So it's a very positive, very high energy. I'm also a Leo, so I like that. I like when the sun is in Leo because it's very high vibing. So you'll get the best of me today, right? The very high vibing. But in terms of manifestation and intention, it's a really wonderful time for setting your intentions. It's a really wonderful time for manifesting things that you want in your life. It's a really wonderful time for, especially around your health as well, like manifesting good health. And I'm going to break down some of the concepts around intention, how that fits into bioenergy system, and how powerful your consciousness is when you start to direct your intention. It is unbelievable how your consciousness will tap into what you focus on. And what you focus on, of course, you're sending energy to. So it starts to culminate and draw the energy together and starts to manifest it for you. So I'll break down a little bit of how that happens. Does that sound good? Excellent. So in terms of, let me just start a little bit about myself before I go on. So I know somewhat of what I'm talking about. I've been practicing a treatment called bioenergy healing for this year. It'll be 31 years. I'm quite proud of that because it's a lot of years of devotion. Sometimes people come into energy healing and alternative medicine and they come in and they do a couple of years and they leave, and after 31 years I'm still here. And even last year I was like, I hope I get to do it for another 30 years. And there's a huge depth of, I would say the biggest feeling with it is service. Like it's a huge sense of service and devotion. And it is like in every way, I would say, like my spiritual practice. Bioenergy healing is my spiritual practice. And it's the practice of unraveling your consciousness and seeing how we're creating our health and our well-being. And we're also in many ways creating illness and sickness. And not that any of us wants to be sick, and not that we're deliberately creating illness, but it's often when we're living in a way that's out of alignment with a truer sense of who we are, people's health will break down. So whenever we're doing things out of what we feel other people want of us, or we're not being authentic. And I would say this year is a big year about authenticity, about, like, I would say people are finding it harder and harder to do the things they don't want to do. Does that make sense? I see all the heads nodding, right? It's so that would be the throat chakra, right? So as we're progressing spiritually through the chakra system, we've been moving from the solar plexus of the heart, and now we're shifting from the heart into the throat chakra. And the throat chakra is communication, creativity, and expression. And so this year is very much about authenticity, about us being real, about us being authentic. It's also I would say like us like returning into alignment. And I always think of alignment. I don't think I have anything here to show you, but like a pendulum. You know, when you think of the pendulum swinging, when the pendulum is just hanging, it's in its center. But life has a way of pushing us, you know, sometimes off our center, right? So, you know, we can either be pulled or pushed into different things. And I think especially the last couple of years has been a real opportunity for people to really feel into, you know, what is true for themselves and what is in alignment. And what I found over these 30 years, 31 years, is that when people get sick and you start to go into helping their body to heal, open up the chakras, you find that often deep down there's an emotional cause over and over and over again. And it doesn't matter how many times people say to me, oh yeah, but Michael, my ailments are physical. Mine was a back pain from a car injury. It doesn't matter what they say the cause. When you get down deep enough into the body, it's always an emotional component. It's always the mind and the heart are out of alignment. So we're not necessarily living in the way that we say deep inside that we want to be living. And we're not fully expressing the truth of that. And sometimes we're just, you know, sometimes life can seem easier if we're doing what we think other people want, but that isn't always the case, because the body will show us, the body will literally tell us through illness and sickness that we come out of our center. And so healing is a beautiful, I would say, like active service to help people come back into their center, to help people find their path, you know, and I would say spiritual path, because I think that everything at the end of the day is spiritual, right? Like there's nobody more spiritual than anybody else, but there's also nobody less spiritual than anybody else. Like everything is spiritual, everything is this harmony between us and nature. And so as we come into harmony with ourselves and nature, then we also come into harmony with each other. And so a lot of times when people get sick, they're often out of harmony with their family, they're out of harmony with their work colleagues, they're out of harmony with their husband or wife, their siblings, their parents. And that disharmony, just like dis-ease, you know, where does disease come from? Well, it comes from dis-ease over a long period of time. Like nobody wakes up one day and they're sick, right? You don't just wake up and you're sick. You get lots of signals beforehand. I would even say like something simple like when someone gets a cold, it's often their body saying to them, you know, you're maybe burning the candle at both ends, right? Like maybe like overdoing it a little bit, and the cold is just simply your body saying you're a bit run down, like a flat tire in your car. You know, it's just a bit run down. And if we listen to the cold and we rest and we recuperate, it's usually done. But in some cases, if people just kind of plow through it and they don't listen and they don't come back into their center and they just keep going, then that's when it's more common for people to get like flus. So a flu is very much a stronger message that's going to put you on your back. It's going to put you in bed. You know, you're gonna feel the dis-ease of it. You're gonna feel the disharmony of you need to rest. You need to reset. And then there's people that, you know, will listen to that and bounce back. And then there's other people that won't listen to that and they just keep going, you know, and they just push through it. You know, they still go to work even when they're sick and they just push through it. And they, you know, and especially, I mean, if you're a mother and you have kids, you've no choice but to push through it, you know. But there's a tendency where our society isn't always, we don't always have the that tribe energy or that support that we need when we're sick to rest and recuperate and bounce back. And so people often feel like, well, they don't have a choice. They just have to keep going, going, going. But the cold escalates into a flu. The flu escalates then often into something like a heart attack or a stroke. And so, over the years, I've seen people who've had heart attacks and they say, like, oh, they knew they were going to have it. And I'm like, well, how did you know you were going to have a heart attack? And they say, well, the writing was on the wall. And I'm like, oh, really? And they even said, like, that people told them, like, people would say to them, if you don't slow down, you're going to have a heart attack. Like, people would say that. How do people know that? Right? Intuitively and intellectually, people know that, right? But yet the people that have the heart attacks haven't integrated that. They know of it, but they don't know it. And so they would just keep pushing forward. And then the heart attack or the stroke, well, really at that stage, you don't have a choice but to stop. And so healing for me has been about helping people to slow down when they start to get symptoms of illness or sickness in whatever form that is. Like if it's in the shoulders, it sometimes could represent that we're feeling like we're carrying a lot of burdens, a lot of responsibilities. If we have trouble with our eyes, there might be things that we don't want to look at, things that we don't want to see. If we have trouble with our ears, there might be things that we don't want to listen to, like things that we're trying to block out. Trouble with our arms, we might have trouble taking in and receiving love. Trouble with our legs, trouble moving forward in life. We could feel at a crossroads. So the different parts of the body are always trying to reflect where the consciousness is coming out of alignment. And then it's trying to guide us, it's trying to guide our attention to that reflection. So you could say the body is a reflection of your consciousness. A body is the reflection of where your energy goes and your attention goes. That's what starts to manifest, right? So in terms of sorry, in terms of like the power of our own intention, like I would often help people over the years like to look at what thoughts they're having, what feelings they're having that has maybe led to becoming ill or sick. And probably the easiest way I could sum that up would be, I would say the majority of people that end up sick, they're doing jobs that they don't want to do. If I could sum it up in one like little, category. And I would often ask, well, why are you doing that job? And people would say, well, I'm going to get a pension, right? And I say, well, when is that? And they're like, in 15 years. I'm like, you might be dead by then, right? Like you can't keep doing like it's okay to work at a job that you don't fully enjoy, right? Like, you can, it's work, right? That's why they call it work, right? But I think, sometimes people say to me they hate their job. Oh, that kind of like makes me feel for them because like I know that you can't continue to do something that you hate and then remain healthy, remain well. Like that doesn't bring wellness. Nowhere in consciousness does you doing things that you hate bring wellness, brings health and joy and happiness and love and bliss. It just doesn't. And so when I think of like healing, for me, like the sense of service is really about helping people come out of their suffering, because the suffering is often unconscious. The suffering is often, oh, well, this is just how things are. This is just how everyone is. And it's not true. Like not everybody lives in the same reality. Not everyone is suffering. And that life can be very beautiful and very, like it's all the things, right? Like life is also suffering, but it's also very joyful and beautiful and magical. And just as people can be sick, people can also be very healthy and very well, just as with everything there's the opposite. And so I wanted to unravel a little bit this evening about like how our consciousness begins to manifest that into form and also what we can do about that. Sounds good? Awesome, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for joining. Lovely to see all your smiley faces. As we said today, well, tomorrow is the Lionsgate portal, the 888, but we're really in it right now. We got some big, strong energies coming in, and it's a wonderful time to really get your mind clear. It's a wonderful time to make changes and transformation in your life. Like, this is the time. This is a beautiful window to do that. The reason why I say that too is because what I've come to understand with energy is that energy moves in waves and rhythms and patterns and cycles. That it's not just like one level of energy all the time. Energy moves in waves, it moves in rhythms, it moves in patterns, cycles, seasons, It moves in a kind of like an ebb and a flow. So in the ebb periods of time, that's a good time to rest and go inwards. In the flow time, that's a good time to express. So in the ebb, we go in and we integrate. In the flow, we go out and we express, we create, we manifest. And so in the ebb, you're building your energy, you're preparing your consciousness, you're preparing yourself. And so often, like even when we learn something, we're out learning something, and then we go inwards to integrate it. And these are natural cycles. And so the 888 is a very powerful cycle of energy where it's the beginning of a rising tide of energy. And so the intentions that you put out at this time will have a very long energy behind them, a very strong, powerful energy behind them. And of course, Leo is the fire energy. So it gives a lot of like motivation and power behind the energy that you bring into manifestation at this time. But then also that can also work against you, because if your mind is scattered, then your body becomes scattered. If your mind is scattered, then your life becomes scattered. So it's a lot of chaos that people experience. I mean, nobody wants to hear this, but like at the end of the day, what I found over 31 years working with thousands and thousands of people in multiple countries is that people are their own worst enemy. That would be ourselves. We're our own worst enemy. And no one gets in our way more than we do, from our conditioning and programming and limiting thoughts, from our thought process is creating chemistry in our body. And that chemistry then decides, if we're motivated, if we're not motivated, if we repeat the same patterns, if we do things differently. So it all operates and begins with the thought process. It all like filters in. So, I mean, one of the things that I often share with my students in bioenergy is that there's only one energy at first of all, so I know the world can seem very polarized, right? But they're two opposing forces of the same energy. Like, all things are one energy. So basically, energy is just raw energy. It's neutral energy. Like, the true energy and science of energy is that it's just raw energy, natural energy, neutral energy. And so if energy is raw and natural and neutral, why is there so much polarization, right? And that polarization comes through our perceptions, you know. So there's no saying perception makes it so. So as we perceive, as we give meaning to things, that's what gives the meaning, right? So one could almost say nothing has meaning until you give it meaning. Nothing has meaning except for the meaning you give it. And so in how this one energy, so there's one energy, and this one energy is flowing down into us. So this energy comes spiraling, flowing down as consciousness into what we call the crown chakra, this energy point at the top of the head. And there's a flow of energy comes into your crown, and everybody has the same energy, the same flow of energy. It's not different for different people. It's one consciousness, one energy that comes streaming down through us, and then our thoughts, our conditioning, our programming, our beliefs will filter that energy and then express it out in a different way. And so, in a beautiful way, one could say, we're all expressing ourselves in different ways. Like, no one's expressing themselves like identical to someone else. Like, everyone's expression is quite different, if not very different. We tend to like fall into groups that are similar, and even like often if you have a husband and wife that's been together for 50 years, maybe even 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you'll notice that they become really similar. Their expressions become really similar. Their language is like almost identical. They're almost returning back to one person. They just start to like become they start to sync up together, right? In that way. And often even to the point where, they will even communicate to each other almost telepathically without even speaking. They know what the other one is about to say, or they know what the other person thinks about stuff, because their consciousness is blended. Their consciousness is blended together. So in terms of like this one energy coming, flowing and streaming through us, we all have this energy available to us. And then as this energy comes into us, what we do with that energy then is really up to us. And I think that's if I was to say, like, what is it that I teach on my courses? Why is it that, I want to share my courses with people? It's really to help people understand this process of, you're not a victim to a life that you create. Boom. Right? Fireworks. You're not a victim to a life that you create, to a life that you have willed into being. You're not a victim to that. But the collective consciousness is living in victimhood. And that you will go along with that victimhood until you like step back and slow down enough to come into realization, self-realization, that your thoughts are creating your reality. And until you reach that consciousness where you begin to realize that you're manifesting through your thoughts and feelings, you're always going to be a victim to what you think is reality, as something outside of yourself. So I would say, like, in many ways, healing and bioenergy training is bringing it is healing the physical body, but it's also healing what's going on the inside. That's really the key, is that if we don't change what's going on inside of us, we just manifest the same illness again. How many people go to the doctor, get their problem sorted, and then they come back again? Right? They take a pill, they think the pill is going to fix things, but the chemistry of the pill can't get into your emotions. It can't fix what's going on inside. It's a different level of hormones that gets released that no pill can really penetrate deep enough to get to the underlying things that of you being out of alignment, right? So as we start to unravel ourselves, it's a little bit like an onion peeling away the layers. As we start to unravel ourselves, one of the stages of consciousness that we go through is when you start to begin to realize that you're not a victim to life, that life is streaming through you, life is flowing through you, and you're guiding it. You're guiding it with your thought process. You're guiding it with your intentions. So let me give you a kind of an idea with that. Like, something I teach in my practitioner training is, it's like if you were driving somewhere and you were using the GPS to get there. Well, just say Nova Scotia for the sake of somewhere to drive to, right? Just because from Vancouver, it's the opposite side of the world, you know. But like, if you're driving to Nova Scotia and you put the coordinates in the GPS, right? The GPS, it does two things. It identifies where you are now, and it identifies where you want to go. And then it plots the most direct course that it can seem to doesn't always work perfectly, but it attempts to plot the most direct course from where you are now to where you want to go. Does that make sense? Right? One of the things that the GPS does not do is it doesn't look at where you've been, right? But when you think of people and you think of consciousness, we tend to do that all the time, don't we? We tend to live in the past a lot. We tend to, oh, well, I can't do that because this is what happened to me the last time I did that. Imagine if the GPS, wouldn't, you turn it on and it says, well, you didn't use me yesterday, so I'm not going to work today. Like, it doesn't argue with you. It just simply, where are you now? Where do you want to go? Right? But the way we work against ourselves is we keep pulling the past forward. We keep rehashing the past and living in the past. And the level one bioenergy healing is just the very first of our training, is really helping people understand that, is helping people understand the process of that your consciousness is streaming through you and you're directing it into the past. And it is such a waste. It's such a waste to be streaming your consciousness into the past, your past experiences, your past regrets, probably regrets is where a lot of people's energy goes to, past memories, past loved ones, all things that's really robbing you out of the beauty and the magic and the freedom of this present moment. And so in terms of like healing is often, we're working on different energy points in the body, the 7 major chakras of the body. And as an example, when the brow chakra is clogged or blocked, we're going to have trouble like really being present in the here and now. And so when it's blocked, we're going to, instead of like projecting the energy out into the now, we're going to kind of circle around like the car driving around the roundabout and not getting anywhere. We're going to be going around in the past. We keep driving around the roundabout. And sometimes like people think like, well, because I'm moving, I'm making progress. Well, not if you're going around a roundabout, right? Not if you're going around in circles. But the point of that is that it's unconscious. Like, people don't know that they're doing it. People don't know that they're living in the past, that they're rehashing the past. They don't know that there's another way available to them, because we tend to repeat what we've already done, and we repeat it automatically. So we're on what I would call automatic pilot. We're just on that automatic pilot. And so healing is about interrupting the process. It's about slowing down. That's in any of the work I've done. If anybody has done any work with me, you'll hear me all the time say, let's slow down and we breathe. And the reason we slow down and we breathe is that it interrupts the process. It interrupts the doing, right? We're human beings, not human doings, right? So we interrupt that process and we start to slow down. And then in that slower mode, we move from the beta brain wave into the alpha brain wave. And into that alpha brain wave, we start to slow down in the alpha brain wave, and we come into more like the 7 to 14 hertz. And so the brain now starts to slow down, and it starts to balance out the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain. It starts to balance the intellect, and it starts to balance the creativity, right? It starts to balance the masculine and the feminine. So as we slow down the brain, it starts to come into harmony between the two sides, the masculine and the feminine. Now, when we do that, sorry, just adding someone here. When we do that, then we also, because we're slowing down, now we actually come back into harmony with the Earth's electromagnetic field. So the Earth's electromagnetic field, called the Schumann resonance, vibrates at 7.83 hertz. And so when we come into the alpha brainwave, now we're coming into alignment with the Schumann resonance, which is also very, very similar to a cat's purr. So cats purr in a very similar like resonance. And that's why when cats sit on you and they start purring, they're actually healing you. They're actually bringing you into harmony with the Earth's electromagnetic field. And that's how they stay healthy. That's why I always say like animals should always have their bare feet on the ground or their paws, right? They should have, and so should humans, because we get the free electrons flowing into our body and we come back in harmony with nature. We come back in harmony with the earth. So it's really important, there's basic things that we can do to improve our health considerably. Obviously drinking clean water, breathing consciously, and being in nature with your shoes off basically is a great way. The hippies were doing something right, the tree huggers. They're connecting with the earth's electromagnetic field and harmonizing the body, and then that would bring in states of love, states of wellness in the body. So wellness versus dis-ease, right? So nature vibrates at a very high frequency. And so when we're in nature and we're connected, she balances out our electromagnetic field of the body. So, but in terms of this GPS idea, so we're driving to Nova Scotia. If you're driving and you take a wrong turn, what's the GPS going to do? It's gonna try to guide you back on track, right? It's going to try to direct you back to where you say that you want to go. And I think like having a vision, having an intention is like that, right? Like if you don't have a clear intention of what you want to bring forward, manifest, create in your life, then when you'll get sidetracked all the time. You get lost in your life, right? Like I think that's where, when you have a sense of service or a sense of devotion to something greater than yourself, where um, it gives your life a sense of purpose. It gives your life a sense of this is where I'm going. And not so much that you're ever really ever going anywhere. Like, how can a spiritual being go anywhere? You're not really going anywhere. But it's a sense of like, it's that sense of that you've got something to devote your life to. And when we devote our life in some way to being of service, personally, I have found that that's when people are fulfilled. People are fulfilled when they're fulfilling the lives of other people, you know. So, and that would say the opposite of self-serving. So when we're self-serving, it's your life can seem very good, but the quality of your life inside might not be as good, right? So on the material side, life can be good, but the quality of life is not so good. And so coming into alignment, which I would say alignment is not so much self-serving, but more service to others. I would say that is the true nature. If you look at the body and how the body works, the chemistry of the body, the organs, the tissues, the cells, the blood, the bones, they all work in harmony with each other. At least that's how they're designed. They're designed to all work together. The whole body working together as a single working unit. And when that is working well, the body is healthy. So you could almost say like that there's an ecosystem inside your body, not just in the world, right? But there's an ecosystem inside of you. And when that ecosystem is aligned and everything is working well, we have good health and good well-being. And we have the ability to integrate whatever's coming up for us and to not get ill or sick, in the sense of like that we're feeling into what's coming up as it comes up and we're processing it. If we're not processing our stuff, our issues, I often think our issues end up in our tissues, right? Like, so if we don't clear our issues, they end up in our tissues, right? So when people say, "Oh, I don't know why I'm sick," like, really, like, really, you don't know? You know, I found that if you go deep enough, people know why they're sick. They just don't want to admit it, you know? Like if someone's in an unhealthy relationship, say, and every day you're at home with your partner and you're really unhappy with them, you know that's not something you don't know. You know, why are you still in it after 20 years, 30 years, 40 years? Why is someone in an, you know, there's people who are in, I love when I hear people are in happy, loving relationships for a long time. I mean, isn't that's beautiful? And at the same time, you know, there's people who are in relationships for a long time that are really unhealthy, you know, and then they wonder why they're getting sick, you know, and that's no different than the person who's in the job and they're staying in a job that they hate because, you know, they're going to get a pension, or, you know, why do people stay in relationships that they're not happy in? Well, because of the fear of, like, you know, losing their financial security, the fear of losing their home, their children, their, you know, what they've built up together. They've invested in so much that it's hard to make a course correction, you know? And so not everybody, like obviously some people do, but it's like when people are getting sick, it's often that they haven't been making those course corrections as they were showing up. And then the separation between you feeling in alignment and the life that you're living, the further those two are apart, the more likely you are to get ill or sick, you know. So like I said, you could be in a job that you dislike and still be healthy, as long as you're aware of, like, um that, like, it's fulfilling a certain way in your life, and maybe it's giving you the time and the money to be able to do the things that you love to do. You know, you could be in a relationship that maybe it's not great, but maybe there's a lot of give and take, and maybe you're learning and growing from each other, and they're okay. It's only when we're really, when we're rejecting our emotions as opposed to accepting our emotions. You know, if we're rejecting something, anything that we reject shows up in the body as blocked energy, as stuck energy. And that stuck energy or that blocked energy affects up your ecosystem. And then your body will start to break down. So the ecosystem comes out of alignment and the body begins to break down. So in terms of, like, the GPS system, I say, like, it's good to have a kind of an idea of how you want your life to be, what way you want your life. And in terms of bioenergy, that would of course be your health, but it's not limited to your health. You could do that for your work, for your relationships, for your finances. The main thing I would say is that, like, even right from level 1 bioenergy, what I teach people is your mind is like a photocopy machine. Literally, it's literally like a photocopy machine. The images that you put in your mind is what you're going to print out into your, not just into your physical body. Your body will become what you're thinking about day to day. But also, your life will start to unfold and unravel based on what you think about day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year. And the things, you know, if you're willing to go there and look at that, the things that are in your life now, you've been thinking about, you know, it could have been last week or it could have been a decade ago. But the things that are in your life, on some level, they've been called forward because in some deep, deep way, they serve you. And that's a really beautiful thing to understand, is that everything is happening to serve you. As difficult, as challenging as that is, sorry, let me just grab a drink of water here. Thirsty work, sharing all these golden nuggets. As difficult as that is sometimes for us to comprehend, especially when things are going what we might consider wrong or not the way that we want, to really understand stress, there's reality and then there's the idea of how you think your life should be. And the further those two are apart, which is your reality as it is now, and then the image of how you think your life should be, the further they are apart, the more stress or friction, we would say in engineering, the more friction there is between your mind and reality. And so, again, healing is always about integration. It's integration 101, integration, integration, integration. So like if you have fear, that you're feeling and integrating your fear. If you've joy, that you're feeling and integrating your joy. If guilt comes up, that you feel and integrate that. Anger comes up, that you feel and integrate that. It's not, the problem is not that you have fear and guilt and shame and blame. The problem is that you reject it, or that you think you shouldn't have it. The problem is that you don't process it, that you don't integrate it, not that it's there. So the reality is that as a human being, we have a wide range of emotions. As a human being, we get to experience happiness and sadness, pain and suffering, joy and bliss. We get to experience all of it as a human being. And I think that's all part of the divine plan. Before we came here, we were told, look, life is a crazy roller coaster ride. You're going to get to experience everything. But how you perceive it, how you interpret it, and what you do with it will depend on your level of suffering. Does that make sense? So then one would have to ask, is suffering optional? And the answer is yes. Suffering happens to an untrained mind. When people haven't started to master their own mind. I mean, we're trying to control and direct all the things outside of ourselves, and we're not even directing, controlling what's happening inside of ourselves. And so that's why, like, learning about your body, your consciousness is so, so important, because it, like, at the end of the day, it's freedom, because you're not changing anything that's happening outside of you. That's just reality. That's life, right? But what you can change is what's happening inside of you. And when you change what's happening on the inside, your perception of how you're interpreting what's happening, if you accept things as reality rather than fighting with reality, then you start to integrate. And then when you start to integrate and you start to realize that you're co-creating with the universe, then at that level of consciousness, you can start to direct the GPS. You can start to plot where you want to go. And it doesn't mean that there won't be obstacles. It doesn't mean that you won't take a wrong turn. You can have a GPS and still take a wrong turn. Has that happened to anybody? Right? You can still, but what will the GPS do? It'll get you back on course. And that's what service does. Like when you have a purpose that's greater than yourself, to be of service in whatever capacity or form that is, it's always going to guide you back on track. It's always going to serve you. And when you have the consciousness that everything is happening to serve you, then it sets everything up to serve you, right? Like it sets everything up to be reflected to serve you. If you have a consciousness that things are happening to you and you feel victimized by that, you're going to stay on the roundabout, stuck in that victimhood. And even though the external circumstances will change, I'm sure you know people that their circumstances change, but then it's almost like they still go back into the same situations, or they still find things to be like an unhappy person will continuously find things to be unhappy about, you know. And if you have people in your life that are really miserable, don't worry about leaving them. They'll find lots of other people to be miserable with, but it doesn't have to be you, right? You can free yourself from that energy. You can liberate yourself from that energy. And, at the end of the day, it's not about getting rid of all the miserable people in your life. You'll have no one left, right? It's about you managing your energy so that you're not matching the energy of other people, that you're in your own authenticity, that you're in your own integration of your highest spiritual form, your Christ consciousness, your full fractal Christ consciousness, that you're coming into alignment with that. And that when we come into our inside of ourselves in our center, that's when we start to align ourselves with like the GPS, our spiritual GPS is the best way I put it. And the spiritual GPS will always work to keep you healthy and well, because it's getting you to operate from a balanced left and right brain, from the masculine and the feminine in harmony, from a healthy ecosystem. So it's like, if we're not in a healthy ecosystem, what we tend to be, are you ready, is in the ego-system, right? And that's the lowest level of consciousness, which also serves a purpose, right? Like we have to evolve out of the ecosystem, but we're in the ecosystem until we evolve. I mean, we're always going to have it, but to some degree, we start to eliminate it, reduce it, make it less and less and less. And one of the ways I share with people, like how that happens in healing, is that when you get triggered, that's your ego system coming in when something triggers you, right? So when something triggers you, it's because you have a wound inside and it's activating that wound to bring attention to the unhealed part of yourself. So now you say, well, maybe there's lots of things in my life that triggers me, right? But as people start to do the work on themselves, the genuine work where they put the effort in and they actually work on themselves, not just take a pill to cover up the symptoms, but you genuinely do the work on yourself, like opening up your energy field, opening up the chakras, bringing your ecosystem into balance. When you start to genuinely do the work, what happens is the things that would normally trigger you, they're not triggering you anymore. And boom, whew, you even like there's a part of you, the wounded part of you, is looking for something to offend you, something to wound you, right? Because that's the identity that it knows. But as you start shifting from the ego system into the ecosystem, you're liberating yourself from your wounding, because you're healing your wounds, you're healing the inner child, you're healing the pain and suffering that comes through the collective victim consciousness. And so as you start to heal that and you start to release those wounds inside yourself, like I say, one of the ways that you'll know that you're healing is when something that used to trigger you comes up and you're not being triggered, you know. And there's so many ways in which you're probably doing that naturally. You evolve over time and you grow spiritually, you ideally grow emotionally, mentally, spiritually over time. But I think in terms of where we're at collectively, it's like we're on the fast course. It's no longer enough to just like wait for things to unravel and unfold. It's getting harder and harder to be in your pain and your suffering. It's getting amplified. So if you're not dealing with the stuff in your life that needs to be dealt with, it's getting worse. It's getting like the energy is so high on the planet right now that it's purging the unresolved and the issues out of your body. So you see this huge rise in people being ill and sick, and like think of one thing alone, say, would be like chronic fatigue. There's a huge rise in anxiety. There's a huge rise in chronic fatigue. Chronic fatigue, people could have aches and pains all over their body. They could be exhausted all the time. one of the things that chronic fatigue comes from is from doing. And then suddenly the body's like, no, I'm not doing it anymore. And the body just can't keep going. It just shuts down. And then healing is bringing the body back into the ecosystem, bringing the body back into alignment, and then the energy opens up again. And that could even be someone could be stuck for 8 years, 8 years in chronic fatigue where they can't move. They might even have trouble getting out of bed. They've low energy, their aches and pains, and maybe 5 sessions of bioenergy healing and their chronic fatigue is completely gone. Like that's how powerful we are as human beings when we come back into alignment. I often say there's no incurable illness. There's only incurable people. People that haven't made up their mind to get better. People that haven't see, you can't move past the image that you have of yourself, because your consciousness is a photocopy machine. And the images that you put into your mind are playing themselves out in your body and in your life. And so if you have like the conditioning and the programming and the belief that your illness is incurable, you're absolutely right. And no one's going to change anything because you're committed to that. And one of the things that I found with healing is that everybody is always right. Right? Everybody's always right. If someone says to you they can't do something, they're right. If someone says to you they can't get better, they're right. We always prove ourselves to be right. I'm just asking, what do you want to be right about? And when you realize that you're not a victim to a life that you choose, then what if you were right about getting better? What if you were right about having a job that you love? What if you're right about being in a happy, healthy relationship, or being in a happy, not even in a relationship with someone else, but being in a happy, healthy, loving relationship with yourself, right? Like with you, right? Like, wouldn't that be cool? And that's where I think like the alignment of the ecosystem is about us coming back into harmony with the self, with our true self, our true identity, not this persona that we've created, this ecosystem where we're trying to prove something, where we're trying to live up to something, but where we're coming back into alignment with the true essence of the very spiritual being that is wanting to express itself through you. I mean, on that note, I would say we're infinite, powerful spiritual beings, powerful spiritual beings living through a physical body. All of this consciousness streaming through us, projecting it out into the world, manifesting and creating. And then at the end of the day, we say, see, I was right. Right? Don't we do that? Don't we say, see, I was right? Well, you're always right. You just have to decide what you're right about, because you're always going to be right. So in terms of like intention, you know, as I'm often, the very, very beginning of any bioenergy session is what's your intention for the healing session, right? And I would do that with everything. What's your intention for your life, right? What's your intention for your relationship? What's your intention for your finances? But in terms of bioenergy, it's what's your intention for your health? What's your intention for this healing session? And the reason I ask that is that you can't move past the image that you have of yourself. Level 1 bioenergy 101. People often say to me, oh, Micah, can I just skip ahead and do level 2? I'm like, no, you got to start with the foundation. And what's the foundation, right? That you can't move past the image that you have of yourself. You got to change the image that you have of yourself, the version that you have of yourself, because you're living your life based on the version on how you see yourself. And if you see yourself as the person who's always sick, no one's going to change that. No physio, no chiropractor, no pill. And so healing Real healing, true healing is working with the body, mind, and spirit, the intention, the breath, and the techniques. It's working with all of them together. That's what holistic health is. It's the whole person. So you're not separate from your body. You are your body. You're not separate from your mind. You are the mind. You're both, you're also the mind and the body, and you're also not the mind and the body, right? Like it's a bit crazy as you start to unravel it. You're not the mind and you're not the body, but you're also the mind and you're also the body, right? We're getting a bit philosophical here. But the kind of basis of that is that you're just one pure streaming energy, and how you perceive will determine how that shows up and manifests in your life. And so what I'm saying is the version that you're living in some ways it's like a radio station. You're tuned into a radio station, and if you stay on that radio station, you're going to keep getting that channel coming in. But what if you could change channels? What if you could direct the energy in your body in a different way than what you're currently directing it? What if you were to direct the energy in a new way into your relationships, in a new way into your finances, in a new way into your work? I don't think that your health is necessarily separate from your finances and your work and your relationship. I think that your health is probably the integration of how you're living in all the other areas of your life. That's kind of how I feel. It's like your spirituality, right? Like you're not, it's not so much like body, mind, and spirit as it is like your body and mind. You are spirit. Everything is spiritual. Your body is spiritual. Your mind is spiritual. Everything exists within consciousness. In fact, if we go really deep, we say there's nothing that exists outside of consciousness. Nothing can exist outside of consciousness. Everything exists inside of consciousness. Now, wouldn't that make sense that then the work that we have to do is on our own consciousness? To get ourselves off the automatic pilot. Instead of going outwards, we got to go inwards. We got to go in to get out, right? We have to go inwards to free ourselves, to liberate ourselves, to authenticate ourselves, right? And so, in terms of like, if we're unaware of where our energy is going, like as an example, if our energy is going into fear, if we got a lot of fear and our energy is going into fear, that fear is producing stress hormones in your body, right? Your fear is producing stress hormones in your body, and your body is always going to be based off the chemistry that you're producing, right? Your biology, you know, is a result of your psychology. Whoa, we're throwing out the bombs today, folks. You know, but your biology is basically, you know, the reflection of your psychology. If you want, if you ask me what someone thinking, I just look at their health and I can know what they're thinking, right? Because it shows up in their body. It's not that I'm a psychic reader. I'm just like observing their body, and then, you know, because the thought, then the feeling becomes the body, you can tell what's going on for people based on how it's showing up in their body. And so if it works downwards, you can also work it back outwards, right? If it works inwards, it also works outwards. We can, if we can bring illness into the body, we can also bring illness out of the body, right? I'm going a little over time here, but don't worry, no extra charge, you know. Let's see how we can wrap it up. Okay, so we said fear is the stress hormone, right? Fear will release stress hormones in your body. But then what does love do? Oh, what does love do? Love produces love hormones. Oh, yummy. Love hormones. Dopamine gives you pleasure. Oxytocin gives you connection. Who doesn't want more connection in your life? Look at these three friends sitting on the sofa together, you know, some oxytocin flowing in between you, that connection, right? And then vasopressin, which is makes you more attractive. So when you're feeling love, have you ever seen someone in love? Aren't they glowing? Right? Don't they glow when people are in love? They're like glowing. You often say, did you meet someone? You know, what's like, you know when someone's in love because it produces hormones in their body that is so good for them, right? Like happy hormones, healthy hormones, connection hormones, self-love hormones. So that's where, like, I always think for healing, it's not just about creating healing relationships, but I think the primary relationship has to be the relationship with yourself. Boom, boom, right? We waste so much money on shit that we don't need. Why? Trying to prove something, trying to show something. Look, if you don't feel good enough, if you don't have good self-worth and self-love inside, no amount of money is going to fill that gap, right? Those issues are in your tissues, you know, buying new cars, houses, you know, they don't fix the problems. And I think, you know, deep down we know that, you know, we know that. You can see that. You can see that. You don't need to think about that too much. I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? Like on the outside, people show, oh, everything is wonderful, but it's like, you know, it doesn't matter what we show on the outside if it's not authentic, if it's not real, you know. And so I think like the journey of service is service, not service to self, as in with the exclusion of others, but when we come in, how can I support and help the quality of other people's lives? Then one becomes service to themselves by being of service to others. And it's a very different sense of service, it's a very different sense of self, because you're serving the ecosystem of humanity, not the ecosystem of personality. Oh, boom, knocking them out of the park here, you know. Um, So, like at the end of the day, your thoughts are making like complementary chemicals. They're making the chemicals and the hormones that become your body, that becomes your motivation, that becomes your life. And so, um, how do you filter through all of the thought process? How do you take yourself off the unconscious? And I think it's something like you can be aware of it, absolutely. I mean, that's my goal tonight is to help make you aware of it. And you know, maybe something that I've said today is going to make a little shift in your consciousness. And sometimes, you know, that'll be friggin' awesome. Like you don't always have to make a major change in your life. You just sometimes like two roads are going along beside each other and you just have a slight turn, but where they end up is in two completely different destinations, you know. So transforming and changing your life doesn't mean you have to like upheaval everything and leave your partner and, you know, quit your job. It doesn't mean that. It just sometimes it's just about going into the healing process, being willing to do the work on yourself, being willing to earn it. Like to earn it is like I'm gonna earn it by learning about myself, by learning about my energy, by learning about my consciousness, and by doing something different than what I've been doing, you know. Because if we keep doing what we've always done, we're destined to keep getting what we've always gotten, right? And thinking that it happens any other way is insanity, right? And that's where the suffering is, because people think, well, if I just do it for longer, I'll do it myself. And if I just do it for longer, you know, maybe I'll work it out. And that's literally the definition of suffering in my book, you know, thinking that you can change something that you haven't been already able to change. And so I think like, and now I'm going to promote my work, right? what I love with the work that I do is that I'm helping to take people out of that unconscious space and showing them the way that we think and the language that we can use. See, you can you can try to change your thought process. Someone can say to you, "Hey, you should think more positive." And you're like, "Absolutely." And you get all motivated. You read a book and power of positive thinking and you get all motivated. And then, an hour later, you're back to where you were, right? Like that's reality kind of hits. And so there has to be something more than just changing your thoughts. And so for me, what I've learned is it's at a deeper level. It's at a blueprint level where we're holding our beliefs, where we're accessing the subconscious mind, where we're changing when we heal the wounds out of the uh, ecosystem, which I'm going to say is the biofield. It's the electromagnetic field of your body is the ecosystem. And so when we remove the wounds out of the ecosystem and we do the work in the right places, right? When we do, which is really the seven chakras, it's the very core of everything that exists and what we are. Everything is energy. There's nothing that isn't energy. And when we go back and we do the work on the energy, back to the prime location of where these things originate, then we start to get transformation. We start to make real change. And so that's really what I offer is I offer sessions to help people, I would say, put down their baggage. So whatever your baggage is, whatever your triggers are, it's doing healing sessions to help people put the baggage down, right? To release and let go of the baggage. And then I do training, and trainings consists of two main courses. Level 1, which is an introduction course, a powerful, intensive introduction called Bioinspired. And that's to inspire you really to take back your health and to put your health in your hands. And then level 2 is an international practitioner diploma course. And that course is really for everyone. It's a course that teaches you about, excuse me, how energy works and how to make the energy work for you and to go through the stages of consciousness out of victimhood through manifestation, but even not stopping at manifestation, but actually allowing yourself even to get out of the way. And that's what we call the flow, when even you're not even in the way and you're in the flow. And that's when the synergy, the energy, things come into alignment, things flow. And in bioenergy, we call that the fifth dimensional state. And we're here at this time, folks, to bring in a new earth, a new energy, a fifth dimensional energy, not to stay stuck in the old paradigm, not to stay stuck in the old way of being, because the old way of being isn't working anymore and hasn't worked and won't continue to work. We have to shift our consciousness. We have to understand that we're more than just our thoughts and the actions of what we're doing in the physical world, but we're all of it. We're thought, we're feeling, we're action, we're even the manifestation. We're all of it. And as we begin to integrate all the levels of that, then we start getting charge of our own health. And when we start getting charge of our own health and well-being, then we're able to help other people with their health. And so the nature of the training is, to heal others, it's like you're healing yourself, right? Like you get to heal yourself on the journey of healing others. And I mean, this is just my journey I'm sharing with you, but I don't know of anything else more beautiful than helping people get out of pain and suffering. It's the most beautiful act of service and devotion to help people come out of pain, to help people come out of suffering. And so if that's something that resonates with you, if it's something that calls to you, please check out my work at daltonsbio.com, DaltonsBio.com, For those who are on the Zoom, I'm posting a link right here. This one is the link tree, and it just brings links to my services. It's in the side chat there. Please make a copy of it and click on it. But in terms of tonight, thank you so much for joining tonight. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll find not a link in the bio, but in the description, you'll find a link to my services. I'm just going to close off for the YouTube. Thank you, everybody, for listening.